going to call the meeting to order at 5:31, the LTD Strategic Planning Committee, and we are going to get started with roll call. So I'll call your name and please state that you're here. So we have Andrew Buck, who is unavailable today, Claire Syrett, also unavailable, and Gino Grimaldi, who's also unavailable, Mayor Knudsen, who we will come back because I think she's going to be here, Heather Buck, unable to attend, and Kelly Sutherland as well. Rob Zako. Scooter Milne.
Here.
Tiffany Edwards.
Here.
Also unable to attend is Bill Johnson. Jack Boysen.
Here.
Paul Comery.
Here.
Sarah Mazzy is going to be joining us.
I'm here.
Thanks, Sarah. And Peter Smith.
Here.
Wonderful. Okay. We're going to go ahead and start. Do we have anyone for public comment?
We do not this evening.
Okay. Thank you. And we will move into staff updates.
All right. Good evening, members of the SBC. First off, I will apologize. I'm getting over kind of a nasty sickness last week, so I'm a little congested still. But anyway, great to see you tonight on this beautiful day. I've got a few staff updates for you, and I'll run through those. They're on the screen up here. So let's start with Connect 2045. So that is LTD's long-range mobility plan. Excited to announce that we're kicking off tomorrow with our consultant team and a group of internal staff. We'll be doing a system tour out in the system, looking at our fixed route and facility infrastructure, as well as looking at some areas within the metro area that are seeing growth and development, and thinking about where we currently serve and where we'll potentially serve in the future. We'll follow the tour with a meeting, and we'll really drill down into what we're doing with this project, what the project is and what it isn't, and setting some high-level goals and objectives at the staff level for the project. We are going to begin recruiting for members of our Community Advisory Committee on the project. The Community Advisory Committee is taking inspiration from our Communications and Outreach Framework Community Advisory Committee that we had a couple of years ago. And we will be offering stipends for people to participate. So, for folks who are not otherwise getting paid to be there to attend meetings and provide us with their time and insights, we think that's a great way to, get feedback from people who may not otherwise be able to commit that level of time for a project. So we do have a new equitable engagement stipend policy that we instituted to help support this. You'll hear more about the recruitment. We should have the recruitment open for the rest of this month, and we'll be doing sort of broad recruiting and also some targeted recruiting. There's an application on the project page, and I do have a link here, but you don't have this in front of you, so we can share the link out later. So it'd be great if you can help us spread the word. And then the other piece of work that's happening right now is our consultant team is helping us develop our engagement strategy. So we are working through that document right now and expect to have that wrapped up within the next couple weeks. So a lot more to come on that project. You're going to be hearing a lot more about it over the next 15 to 18 months.
You answered my question. 15 to 18 months. Thank you.
There you go. All right, next project to talk about is our Attain Regional Mesh project. So Attain is a federal grant program for innovative transportation and technology projects. You all are probably aware that we were awarded funding quite a while ago for this grant, but we had not been able to get the grant agreement executed until just about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And so now that we have the agreement in hand and the funding is available for us, we are proceeding. A couple of first steps on this project. Well, again, this is the on-demand service within the Bethel community that we're establishing. It's a pilot project with some technology components. high-level context there. But two key steps that are underway right now are putting together an intergovernmental agreement with the University of Oregon, who is tasked with doing the evaluation for the project over the 3-year course of the project, which is a required element of the grant that we have to provide back to the FHWA. And then the next thing that we're working on here is developing our request for proposals for a project management consultant that can oversee the project management and some of the technological development and integration pieces. So more to come on this one as well in the coming months. Next slide. The LTD Budget Committee met on April 28th, and I thought it'd be helpful just to share with this group the timeline for how the budget process works. So the Budget Committee, again, met at the end of April. The proposed budget then goes through the public process for public comment before a public hearing that's going to be scheduled on May 20th. And then ultimately, the board will be asked to adopt the budget, the long-range financial plan, and the community investment plan towards the end of this month, May 20th. All right, so more to come there as well. Fair system roadmap. So we shared this planning project with you last year. We will be bringing the completed Fair System Roadmap to the board on May 20th to share the results of that plan with the board. And the plan provides clear direction on our Fair System replacement project and associated work over the next 2 to 3 years. This is a big project with a lot of pieces, software, hardware, fair policy, a lot of work that's going to go into this, including a Title VI analysis, equity analysis, among other things. And so with the roadmap complete, it gives us very clear direction on how we proceed now. So we'll begin, some of the initial work will be around the fair policy and fair revenue analysis. So understanding what part fairs play in our overall revenue picture. And then thinking about how our fair policy, which if you've ever looked at our fair policy, you can find on our website, it talks about our different fair rates and concession fares and those sorts of things. So we'll get into that work right away. And then the sort of bigger body of work is really developing a request for proposals for a full system replacement. And we'll share more as we develop more on that project. Next one is the coordinated plan. So this is another project that we've engaged with SPC on. The project is wrapping up. We'll return to the SPC next month with a draft final plan. And then we'll be bringing that to the LTD Board of Directors later in the summer for consideration of adoption. And again, the coordinated plan, if you remember, is a required FTA document that helps us determine how we prioritize and spend a certain class of federal dollars, 5310 dollars, on coordinated transportation services. Next. Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. So this is the state payroll tax program to support transit. And this will also be on the ballot. I'm not going to speak to that right now as part of the transportation funding referendum. But despite that, there is a lot of ongoing work happening with STIF funding right now. So we just submitted a number of discretionary applications. So this is the competitive funding that's available statewide. And this is the list of requests that LTD has submitted through that discretionary program. So a number of vehicles and then operational expense support for Diamond Express, the rural shuttle pilot, and then the downtown loop pilot as well. So these are our requests, and we'll learn more in the coming weeks and months on whether or not those will be funded. Then the STIF formula plan, which is the plan that carries forward every 2 years. We're beginning to start that planning work now, and we need to have our new plan in place in January. Is that correct? I believe STIF formula plan in January. Yeah, so you'll be hearing more about the STIF formula plan as well.
Do you know how much total funding statewide is available to discretionary funding?
Rob, sorry, 1 second. Do you mind asking the question in the mic?
What is the total statewide amount available for discretionary funding?
Might need to phone a friend on that one, and I don't know if we actually have an amount yet. Statewide. We can get back to
Okay.
the number. Yeah.
I mean, it looks like $4 million for this area. So,
Yep.
and, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we can return when we have an estimate of the available dollars. All right, next slide. I think this is my final staff update here. So we are recruiting for our LTD board of directors. So we have we'll have 2 open positions for Subdistrict 4 and Subdistrict 6. We have a webpage up on our board of directors webpage, and you can find more information there. Please help us spread the word on this opportunity as well. I think that's it. Yeah. Thanks.
Any questions? Go ahead, Rob.
Is there some sort of public notice or link if anybody's interested in applying or interested in the board positions where they can get more information?
Yes, it's on our website on the board page of the LTD website, and there's a link there that takes you to a State of Oregon portal where interested applicants can submit their applications. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Dave. Just for the record, noting Mayor Knudson's with us. Thanks for joining us tonight. All right, going to move into our agenda items. If there's no other questions for Dave, we can start with our transit shared mobility study.
Great. All right. Good evening, members of the SPC. My name is Carrie Asklar. I'm an associate planner at Lane Transit District. Happy May. May is Bike Month, as you probably know, so this presentation is perfectly timed with our guest speaker today and his presentation. Before I hand it off to Brody, I just want to provide an overview of what this presentation is and why we're presenting to the SPC tonight. So what you'll be seeing in this presentation is an overview of our beloved bike share system as it is today, and a little bit of how transit and bike share can work together to expand and enhance travel options in our region. This presentation will also introduce a project that Brody and Cascadia Mobility are leading with support from Lane Transit District. And I also just want to note this project is funded by a grant from ODOT to study what the next generation of our bike share system could be, including electrification of the system, as well as how we could integrate bike share service into LTD services, which is what I'm really excited about. And lastly, before I hand it off to Brody, LTD has a long history of supporting bike share, including contributing funding to the original bike share feasibility study, way back when, all the way up to today, where we have bike share stations at Eugene Station and Springfield Station. So this study that you'll be hearing about today is just the next step in that history. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Brody Hilton.
Right, great. Hello, thank you, Carrie. Yes, Brody Hilton, Executive Director, Cascadia Mobility. Hello, SPC. Nice to be here with you tonight. Dave has a little bit scratchy throat. I'm about a week away from having a similar problem, but because of grass allergies. So I'm glad that we're tucking this in while I can still breathe. So thanks for getting me here. May is Bike Month, timely for this presentation, and also timely today because we had Congresswoman Val Hoyle in town today. Some of you are aware of this event or were at this event. Mayor Knutson spoke at this event, and it was just a lovely get-together, celebrating bike share, celebrating transit, and our work together in this community for bike share to be a success, and I'll talk about that. But I also just want to touch on the fact that our unique model in this community has risen to a federal level with Val's attention on our success, and she will be introducing federal legislation through the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill that will make, or she's hoping to introduce, we'll have to see how this process plays out ultimately, but she's leading the introduction potentially of some bill language that would make shared micromobility projects eligible for certain pots of federal funding, which is very exciting for us as we embark on this next phase of bike share in our community. So just with that introduction, I will talk a little bit about, as Carrie alluded to, sort of the history of bike share, our unique model, and then what we're working on together for the future. So, and if you guys can keep me honest with time, I'd appreciate it. So I think I have about 30 minutes ish, and I want to leave time for questions. So cool. So just a quick recap of sort of what we've been able to accomplish since taking over Bike Share as a nonprofit, which started in 2021, and in our first year of operating as a nonprofit and what we call a two-wheel transit agency. We do really take ourselves quite seriously. We have fun doing our work, but you know, we take the work very seriously. We expanded, we grew this ridership over time. We ran the e-scooter share pilot for a year. That was the second for-profit operator to leave our community. That provider went bankrupt, but we were very impressed with the number of trips we got. And I think what we proved in operating that e-scooter share pilot was that there's quite a demand for other modes of shared micromobility. There are certainly people that would like to get on a device that aren't interested in pedaling a traditional bike. So that was an insight for us. The scooters went away, and we continued to grow, and now this year we're projecting over 320,000 trips in 2026, again, up from 90 or so thousand in 2021. Let's cover a quick history of bike share in Eugene. Carrie touched on some of these things. LTD and the city of Eugene funded the first feasibility study in 2014. In 2018, bike share launched, 300 bikes, 30 hubs, and this was operated by private business Social Bicycles, which was acquired by Uber. I just want to bring up I have this here because I have some speaker notes, so I apologize if I'm looking in two places. 2020, Uber walks away. This was the beginning of the pandemic, and for a time, the city of Eugene picked up the pieces of the program and ran it, put out an RFP for a nonprofit provider. I will talk about my background in a minute, but I was uniquely positioned to start that nonprofit, did so, and we pursued the RFP from the city of Eugene, began operations in 2021, and concurrently we won a grant from ODOT, which helped with some startup funding for us. There's a photo of our team from maybe a couple years ago, but many of those people still work with us. We have a lot of fun, like I said, doing our work. 2022, I'd say bike share caught on. The Shared Mobility Working Group was formed. Some of you are part of that, or at least aware of it. Dave's part of it, Paul's part of it, others here. Tiffany, frankly, is on Cascadia Mobility's board of directors as well. So this is where a lot of our work comes together and where we talk about the future of our program and the successes of our program. The e-scooter share pilot, I mentioned that. It launched in 2023 and folded in 2023, but we had a pretty successful 9 or 10 months of operations on behalf of Super Pedestrian. It was quite profitable for Super Pedestrian. In fact, it was one of their most profitable, their single most profitable market on a per trip basis, which I think underscores the opportunity we have here if we want to optimize for revenues from the system, if that's a choice we want to make as we think about the future. Cascadia Mobility expanded in 2024. There's a picture of Mayor Knutson and I right there, right before we led a ride down the Amazon path to the Riverfront Park last year. And we expanded to 450 bikes and have over 150 stations now, including expansion into Springfield, which is funded now by LTD. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. 25, we had record ridership. We're now integrated into LTD's transit app. We can do so much more here, but in order to do that, we need to take a next step. That's why we pursued some grant funding from ODOT to develop the plan that we're working on together, which I call Bike Share 2.0. So quickly, background, who am I? And I just want to highlight LTD's involvement. Definitely involved in all the ways Carrie mentioned. Also wrote a letter of support for the IMP grant application that ultimately led to funding this plan that we're working on together. So LTD, big partner since day one. I have been launching and operating bike share programs and businesses since 2010. I was involved in the very first bike share large municipal projects around the country, Capital Bike Share in Washington, D.C., Boston's bike share program. I moved to Philadelphia for a period, launched what's called Indigo in Philadelphia and a company called Bicycle Transit Systems. Ended up finding my way to Uber, running a bunch of programs from Portland. Uber went away. Like I said, I started Cascadia Mobility. I only give you that background just to say, I didn't just start this nonprofit because I like bikes. I'm ultimately a business person that is excited about what bicycles and bike share how they can transform communities. And in city after city where I've seen bike share programs succeed, we have seen land use patterns improve, we have seen bicycle infrastructure improve, and we've seen mode shift significantly move toward bicycling and transit ridership. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. So that's my background, and my team is no different. My operations director, Al Hongo, and I work together at Uber at Jump. In fact, I hired him when we launched this program back in 2018 to be the head mechanic at the time. So he now leads our whole team, and he runs a very tight ship. We do a good job together. We're values driven. We're very passionate about the impact we have. We believe access to transportation is a human right and a social determinant of health, and I know that that aligns with so many of LTD's values. We're community oriented and local. I touched on that. We're entrepreneurial. We're a 501c3, so we're grant eligible. A lot of the funding that we've secured certainly has been passed through from the MPO or from LTD, but also we've secured our own grant funds through LCOG, through OHA, and through other grant opportunities that we've sought, including education grants, which we've also dabbled in bike education and encouragement. So our scope can flex. And then we're collaborative, right? We put together the Shared Mobility Working Group. We convene stakeholders around what success looks like for our program, and local partnerships are the key to this. Paul knows this, that U of O is a key partner in our success. LTD is a key partner in our success, and is all these partners that have made our ridership so high. And not only do we view LTD as a key partner for us, but we view transit as a key partner for us. If transit isn't succeeding, bike share isn't succeeding. So we're huge supporters and advocates of transit as well. And I could talk more about that, but I'm going to keep it going. So here we are today. Like I said, we started with 300 bikes and 30 stations. We now have 450 bikes. We keep about 405 active on average just because breakage, right? Bikes get flat tires, need repairs. We inspect them every month and so forth. So they come in and out of service. And on those 450 bikes, we're getting about 1,000 trips per day. If you do the math, right? 320,000 plus trips is what we project for the year. That's 1,000 trips a day. It's a little less, but you get it. But right now we're getting about 1,500 trips a day. So that's a big number for a community of our size, and it's credit to all the things I've talked about: the infrastructure, the transit service, the U of O, the partnerships, the riders, the team, the professional team. So this is what it looks like economically right now, right? This year, and the slices of this pie chart change year after year. Sponsorship only comprises about 10% of our budget now because Peace Health has had to back off what they're able to contribute. The U of O has stepped up significantly since we got started. U of O contributed nothing when we started and now contribute about 25% of our budget between ASUO and U of O transportation services. We increased our fares slightly last year, and that has been impactful and is now 40% of our overall budget, and LTD is contributing about 5%. By the way, this is about $1 million a year operating budget. I'm going to show this in a second, but so you can break that down in simple numbers. That's about 40,000 in fares and about 50,000 this year from LTD, and what LTD is paying for is a service in Springfield that we provide out there. So I would say then the only grant funding we're getting is the LTD dollars and the Eugene via the MPO dollars. So about $250K, and then the rest is sponsorship, U of O, which buys down the fares for students, and fare revenue. Moving on, how it works now, like I said, it's $1 million a year operating budget, 450 bikes, 300,000 trips, and an average of 1 mile per trip. I want to show you this table just to illustrate an apples to apples of what it is when we look at what LTD's bus plus bus rapid transit only operating expenses and fare revenues are relative to the bike share program using the numbers above for the bike share program. I don't mean to get too in the weeds, but I just want to sort of show that in a transit sense, we're moving people much at a lower cost per trip, and we're earning more per passenger mile. So when we talk about a partnership in the future, if we're thinking about this in a transit terms, this can really improve the unit economics of moving people. And then again, that fare revenue per passenger trip is strictly the fares, that $400,000 in fares, not including the U of O's contribution to buy down the passes or the sponsorship dollars, just fares, as is, understand the LTD number is just fares, fare box. So anyway, apples to apples a little bit. So that's the history, that's the economics. Now what? Now we're developing a plan for shared mobility 2.0. The goal is to do these three things: electrify, expand, and integrate. And if we do those three things, I believe we can get 500,000 trips on 500 e-bikes, to put it simply. We're getting 320,000 this year on 450 pedal bikes, and I think what e-bikes do is unlock all sorts of different use cases, all sorts of different user types. It might be an aggressive goal, but that's the way to think about what we can achieve here. The electrification improves accessibility and broadens our user base. More people can use these devices, and we can put them in more places. The length of trip could perhaps increase in length. We can identify new service areas and extend the reach of transit, making it easier for people to connect to the bus. And obviously, we want to integrate with LTD. That's a big goal of ours. Integration can mean lots of different things, and we'll talk about that in a second. And also integration can mean multimodal. It could mean e-scooters. It could mean pedalless e-bikes, a type of sit-down scooter with a throttle that might cap at just 15, right? So mobility devices for abled and disabled types of people that can access these devices and might not even need to pedal. So that is a long-term goal. Different devices also integrated in what we're doing here. Why are we doing it? Because it aligns with all of the regional plans we have. That's the first, provide public transportation to ensure a connected, sustainable, and equitable community. That's LTD's own vision statement. This is a first and last mile solution. And shared micromobility is called out as a key strategy in every local plan that we have, including U of O's just released transportation plan, LTD's mobility management strategy. In fact, Bikeshare is the cover boy of the LTD mobility management strategy there. So we're very, very proud to be considered. So here's what we're doing. How am I doing on time? And am I talking too fast? People good? Okay.
You have till 6:30.
Okay. What time is it? There's no.
You have like 30 minutes, a little over 30.
Okay, I'm good. So here's what we're doing. And I just want to time check. Okay, I've got plenty of time. We are doing a regional assessment, and this is about where we are in the plan so far, right? We're looking at transportation access and equity. We're looking at electrification, transit integration, system coverage, and regional governance. How should this be governed? And right now we have a pretty good model. The implementation plan is a financial pro forma, which we have sort of a shell pro forma right now, but that will get more detailed. A public engagement plan. I think part of the success of Bikeshare is the way that this program engaged with the public before it was launched. The Scooter Share program, not so much, and so there was a lot of public pushback on that program. And a procurement plan. We need a way to go to market, a way to release an RFP, a request for proposals, to identify a new equipment vendor, and of course we need the funding to be able to do that. So just digging in a little bit, the regional assessment is covering these items: transportation access and equity evaluation, understanding how a unified single brand shared micromobility system can improve mobility outcomes for all users, right? So this isn't just people that are able-bodied that can pedal a pedal bike, but that can reach more types of users, ages, abilities, and so forth. Electrification assessment, and we're in the middle of this right now. Take advantage of high demand for e-bikes, balancing upfront capital cost and maintenance operational ongoing costs. In other words, if we spend more money upfront on high quality equipment, we might be able to drive down the maintenance cost of the program itself. So those are trade-offs we have to balance. Do we want a lower quality, lower cost product that might be more expensive to operate, or do we make that investment upfront? Those are things we're thinking about. Transit integration evaluation, and Dave knows, and Carrie both know this all too well, thinking about better ways to integrate with transit, extend its range, fill gaps, and provide first and last mile connections. System coverage assessment, identify where we can meet community needs and expand access across the region. We have some ideas, but we certainly are looking at the data and prioritizing phase 1, phase 2, those types of things. And then regional governance, what is the way to structure this deal? Who owns the equipment? Who is the operator? Who is the sponsor? How do we think about the roles that the different partners in the program, what roles do they play? Looking at the implementation plan then, the financial plan is looking at financial cost projections and revenues, identifying potential funding sources, and certainly if Val is able to make federal funding more available to us, that is a big win. And there are some other opportunities that I'm aware of, that we are all aware of, that are part of the Shared Mobility Working Group that are forthcoming that might be ways that we can acquire some funds to acquire some equipment. Public engagement strategy. Doing upfront public engagement that centers community voices, builds trust, and supports regional expansion. And then, as I said, procurement framework, identifying the next steps for implementation. So those are the phases of the plan. I just want to talk for a second about the benefits of electrification. We've touched on it, but I think one thing I hear in the community is concern about electric bikes and the different speeds and the different types. And I want everyone to understand that when we talk about electrifying our bike share fleet, all of or some of it, what we're talking about is speed limited shared mobility, where likely the devices would not be able to exceed something like 15 miles per hour or some speed that we would all as a community agree on. We would seek an equipment provider that could likely geofence certain areas where speeds would be dropped, right, to 10 or lower, depending on the traffic there. So we want to make sure that it's safe for all users, but the benefits are that the trip distances can be up to 30% longer, more riders, a reduced effort reduces barriers to entry. We can get more trips. E-bikes are more attractive to riders and have increased ridership by 30 to 60% in some systems. Actually, that number can be 100% or more, and that's what I think we could do here, is more than 60%. Higher revenue potential, riders will pay more to ride an e-bike when given a choice. And so that's something we want to weigh as well as we think about the future, right? Pedal, e-bike, revenue from trips, what's equity, how do we achieve that goal as well? So balancing all these trade-offs. Now I want to talk about levels of transit integration. This is where I have my notes because there's so many details as we dig into these. So just bear with me for 1 second here so I can catch myself up to where we are. Okay. So transit integration can mean a lot of things, right? Branding, branding and customer experience. It can be co-branding vehicles, stations, and digital platforms to present a unified system identity. It can be co-locating transit systems or transit stations and bike share hubs, filling gaps in transit service, coordinated wayfinding and signage, coordinating advertising or sponsorship. For example, adding assets to transit advertising contracts. In other words, we're LTD to seek a vendor to place advertisements on the buses. Perhaps the bike share program could be considered a component of that, earning revenue that way. Communication strategies that can reinforce shared goals and increase visibility. And we do a little bit of that right now with Eric, the marketing manager for LTD, and Justin Sandoval, my marketing manager, so working together quite a bit. Trip planning and wayfinding, integrate shared micromobility options into digital transit trip planning tools, doing that already. Real-time information in trip planners and apps, and to a degree we're doing that as well with Transit app. Fare payment integration is a bit of the holy grail of bike share success, and one that is perhaps less about technology and more about governance. Who gets the revenue? What pot does it go in? Is it a bus trip? Is it a bike share trip? That's perhaps the bigger challenge to navigate. But I think it's navigable easily here. But anyway, fare management versus fare integration, i.e. you can have a tap card that has two different accounts linked to it, right? So, but then fare integration is a different thing where you're, paying for your bus fare might also be your bike share fare. Integration with payment methods, digital payment apps, payment cards and passes, mobility wallets, like Portland has, for example, fare coordination, including fare capping, free or discounted transfers, equity-based pricing, which we both entities have now as well, and free ride periods. In other words, if you were to ride a bus, then maybe your bike share trip after the bus trip is free for the first 30 minutes or something like that, right? So those are all things we can work through. And then operational and service integration. Shared resources and in-kind contributions, shared or donated maintenance or operations facilities, insurance coverage, coordinated customer service or support functions, station electrification permits, in other words, power at, LTD stations, installation, and then certainly there are other ideas as well that will bubble up, but those are a few that come to mind. And then lastly, on this topic, data and technology coordination, data sharing practices that address privacy and security concerns, and that support service planning, and then system evaluation, right? Performance evaluation, and where can we optimize bike placement versus bus routes. So these are all ways. This is what transit integration. When we say transit integration, a lot of times we're like, oh yeah, so you pay for that and you get both. But transit integration can mean all these different ways we can collaborate. Customer service being another one. So how do we? And these are all things we're going to work through. In fact, I forgot, but there was a transit integration white paper, I believe, included with the materials you got today. So if you want to dig in deeper, there's more in there. So that's all what we're looking at. So benefits to LTD in the community. I mean, I think we've covered it, a lot of it. Transit access, first and last mile connection to bus routes. For you guys, focus the ability to concentrate on higher ridership corridors. Community goodwill, I think, is huge here, demonstrating your role as a mobility manager with zero emissions. Innovative. I mean, it's like I said, we happen to be here. We happen to be doing the work. We happen to be doing it. I'd like to think we're doing it fairly well. And so we'd like to, LTD stands to sort of just benefit from the circumstance of that, I hope. And we want to increase ridership. That's just part of what we want to, our role in the community, right? Helping to get people out of cars. So I do think this is just an easy way for LTD to put a stake in the ground, be among the first transit agencies to integrate with bike share, not the first, but among the first. And then to influence the public transportation landscape, I think is a unique opportunity. Our model in this state is one of a kind. It is not unique throughout the country, but our two-wheel transit agency is sort of one of a half dozen or dozen that do the work the way we do it. And working with transit with LTD would be a huge innovative step for LTD and for the industry. And efficiency, providing service at a fraction of the cost per trip and higher fare revenue per trip when compared with the bus. We talked about that as well. Okay, and then, oh yeah, I'm here. So this is a look at the overall plan that we're working on. These are all of the months of the plan and the steps of the plan. We're in about month 4. We talked about the electrification assessment, the transit integration assessment. We're looking at the regional assessment governance model and so forth. As we get further down the road, we'll have a detailed financial plan, and then we will hopefully move forward with the steps of that plan. Where do we find the money? How do we structure contracts and so forth? Ultimately, I think once the plan is complete, we will probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave or Carrie, but hopefully we'll have an opportunity to come to the LTD Board of Directors and present the completed plan and what really makes some, hopefully be able to make some recommendations on what we plan to do next. So that's the timeline, and that's the end of my talking parts, and you can now, if you have any questions, you can ask questions. This is just a CGI conceptual inspiration for the LTD folks here, but if we were to integrate and co-brand and help people make that natural association that bike share is transit, and that's how it should be used. So with that, I'll open the floor to any questions.
Thank you, Brody, and for the not subliminal positioning here.
Yeah.
Paul, you raising your hand by turning that over?
Yes.
Is that perfect?
I was wondering what you were doing, Paul. I wasn't sure.
Indicating
I'm
that.
glad that I
Okay,
used the
great.
deduction,
Helpful for me.
look around and you're leading the charge. So I guess that's what we do now. So thanks, Paul. I'll let you go ahead, go.
And Chair, is it okay if I ask a series of questions?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Oh,
you.
no.
Don't worry, Brody. I think you can handle this. So my first question, in talking about fare payment integration, you mentioned an option or a possibility of, you rode the bus and you get 30 minutes of free riding on a bike to get to your ultimate destination. And you also talked about first and last mile connections. That sounds like a great last mile connection. Is there a way that we could integrate that so there'd be a first mile connection where someone could ride a bike to the bus stop and have that same compatibility?
There are many ways to do that, and fare integration in a technological sense is like, as I said, the holy grail way of doing that. I mean, I think as a phase one approach to that, to answer that question, we could do something like, when you take a trip, you receive some sort of code texted to you at the end of your trip that you then show to the bus driver. Like, it would be we would have to develop a process. And it would be low tech, low lift, but there are ways to do that. High tech and low tech, yeah.
Thanks. I'll just step in. So I did mention the fare system roadmap in my staff update. So there are technological prerequisites or requirements that have to happen both on LTD's side as well as the bike share side to make that work. And then it really is the governance is the piece that we will have to work through. But the examples that we've talked about tonight are totally feasible. It's just a matter of having the technology in place, which we don't today, but we will in the future, and then the governance structure around that. Yep.
Pete, Paul, before you go, Brianna, can we pull the screen up so we can make sure that if anyone's raising their hands or anything? For my purposes here, thank you. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. So I wanted to go back at the beginning of the presentation. You had a slide up there talking about bike share economics. And you had the side-by-side of the operating expense per passenger trip for Peace Health rides and the LTD bus. My question, what is the average trip length for Peace Health bike rides? And how does that operating expense per passenger trip compare as we think about lengthening the distance? Because you talked about e-bikes being, I think, 30% longer trips. Yeah. So does that efficiency, is that maintained with longer trips, or is that because we have shorter trips?
Yeah, that's a good question. Here. Yeah, that's a good question, Paul. Can I slide back to that possibly just as a reference? I got it here. Boop, 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 boop. There it is. So our average trip is about a mile, and we anticipate with e-bikes it might be like 1.3, 1.5. So that makes our operating expense per passenger, the operating expenses no doubt will be higher for an e-bike share system. The early estimates were looking at about 50% higher, right? So we might think that if we ran a full e-bike project at this size, it might be about 1.5 million a year. Like, this is ballpark, right? So then I'm not good at math in my head, but if you take it and extrapolate, on $1.5 million year budget and 1.3, 1.5 miles per trip, I think it actually works out to be about the same. Ish, because we're gonna get more trips.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my last question, Chair, thank you for allowing multiple in a row here. You mentioned that you expect that you could charge higher rates for an e-bike, that people would be willing to spend more for an e-bike. Are you looking at a combined fleet of e-bikes and traditional bikes, or are you looking at going all e-bike? And if it's a combined fleet, what would the messaging look like for customers to know which fare they're paying?
Right. Yeah. Good questions. I think we're looking at both, but one of the outcomes that I heard from the last Shared Mobility Working Group meetings, the last meeting we had about a week ago, was that a mixed fleet would be something that we should be thinking more seriously about, because we can charge less for the pedal bike and earn higher fare revenue per trip on the e-bike. In other words, the e-bike is the sort of the luxury mode in this case. It also makes it easier for us, while we want to certainly offer discounted fares to qualified users on both device types, it means that we can make the trips on the pedal bikes virtually free, as they are today. They're free for low-income qualified users of bike share. And if we charge a premium for the e-bikes, I think we'll be able to still maintain a high level of ridership while earning much higher fare revenues. And with the mixed fleet, still be able to keep the affordable option for those that are price sensitive. Yeah. You good? Cool.
Peter and then Sarah.
Thanks, Brody, for presenting tonight. My question was also on the bike share economics slide. So you mentioned like 30 to 100% increase in ridership. Do you know where those riders are coming from? How many of those are new trips? How many of those are coming from transit or from personal bikes?
On the presumed increase in riders?
Yeah.
I think that's a good question, and I don't have a good answer for you. But what I know is that when we ran the e-scooter share pilot, we earned about 400,000 trips or so combined between the two modes. And the scooter share pilot was only 9 months, and it was sort of tossed out there. There was no lead in. There was very little user education. And I think if we're intentional about it, that we can get to that 500,000. Your question of where do they come from is a good one. I think more and more will be transit riders. There's all sorts of data out there that sort of says, and I'm not going to try to even estimate the numbers, but many shared micromobility users are connecting with transit. We need to do a better job of surveying here to know in this community how many people are doing that, something we're working on, and in fact, I'm talking to LTD about doing that. But I think just in general, as our community continues to expand bike infrastructure, continues to build high-density housing, and continues to invest in transit, that we can see a natural path where we've sort of built a culture around this mode, and that's what we've seen in our growth. So I know that's a roundabout answer, but the riders will come. If we build it, they will come. I'm confident in that. Yeah.
Sarah and then Scooter. Sarah, do you still, you had your hand raised, want to make sure that you have your opportunity?
Yes, sorry, I was struggling to unmute. I am curious if you've thought, Brody, about the integration, various aspects of the integration. I'm most excited about the idea of that first mile, last mile, getting, free bike share after you use transit. I'm curious about if you've thought about how that would integrate with the free student passes and the age limits.
And specifically, you're talking about the high school student passes?
Well, they're actually for all ages. And
Right.
So that I wonder about just in general, if you've thought about that integration, and also about the age limitations.
I will admit we haven't gotten that far down the road in the planning phase. I will say now the minimum age on bike share is 16. It is a separate pass that you would need to purchase if you're a student. And I think that's something we need to put our heads together about and develop a plan for, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Flag.
Okay. I have another question about whether it would be, when you're figuring out expanding, if you're expanding into a partially electrified fleet or a fully electrified fleet, and you're expanding the stations, would that be the type of thing that you could pilot stations, or do you already pilot stations, and leave them if they're successful, take them out if they're not? I'm thinking especially about what you said around integrating further could allow LTD to really focus on the high ridership routes, while bike share is taking care of those first last mile pieces. But I'm curious about how those would be how those locations would be identified and stations created.
Yeah, also a great question that I don't have a good answer for, other than to relate what we're doing today, which is because of the type of equipment we use, it can be locked to a regular bike rack or a quote unquote bike share hub. And perhaps Sarah, I know you know the difference between that, but perhaps everyone here has seen, Peace Health rides or a bike rack. And I think our first hope would be that we could potentially, although I'm not making any promises, but it would be great if we could identify an equipment vendor that had a similar type of flexibility wherein a component of our stations were charging hubs, so it effectively decentralizes the charging operation and would incentivize riders that are on an e-bike to dock their bike into a charging hub while also preserving that flexibility of ending your trip at a regular bike rack that we essentially then just geofence as a hub, which is what we do today. So hopefully we can maintain that flexibility while decentralizing the stations, the true stations that would charge the bikes. That's what we're aiming for, frankly.
If I could just jump in, to your question, Sarah, we have had discussions with Cascadia Mobility about exactly what you're asking about in terms of doing a low-cost, quick pilot in locations that neighborhoods or geographies within our community that are not currently served by fixed route. So we've had some of those discussions with the constraints of the current system. We have not been able to get something on the ground yet in terms of a real pilot as sort of a test of a replacement for fixed route to see how that works. But I'd imagine with the new investment, the new system, with more bikes and more resources, we could potentially do that in the future.
Great, thanks.
Scooter and then Paul.
I just want to say, first of all, I like what's been presented so far. It seems really well thought out. And mostly just another quick huzzah for the idea of all the integration that you've thought of. And particularly, it sounds nitpicky in the grand scheme of things, but I like that. I think you either mentioned or implied that you'd like, ideally, to find a way to integrate the fare system for the bikes with like whatever fare system is being used with the regular bus boarding at the time, and have that just be like one app, because I've dealt with having to deal with like 2 different apps for the regular Metro Transit system, and then another 2 or 3 different apps for whatever other ride share vehicles they had available. And it's like every stinking little thing wants an app these days. And if you can just get rid of one less app, I'm more likely to do whatever it is the app wants me to do.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's great comment, and I wholeheartedly agree.
Paul and then Tiffany.
A couple of questions about equity. So on the scope of work slide and the regional assessment slide, you talk about access and equity. And my question is, right now, are you aware of, or have you identified gaps in the service, particularly with regards to equity? Are you aware of populations that aren't being well served? Or is that all information that is going to come out of the analysis?
The real answer is that information will come out in the analysis. But I will say anecdotally, we already have a very strong sense based on usage patterns and sort of feedback from the community where we could stand to expand first. And certainly I have 3 ideas in mind, and they're not going to surprise you at all. It's expanding to the west along the Fern Ridge Path, where we have a lot of dense housing opportunities and great bike and transit access. It's expanding within Springfield because we have dipped our toe in the water, but we haven't created a network effect that allows that system to be fully utilized. And it would be to the north as well, where we have lots of housing density and shopping opportunities north of the river, just north of the river. So the logical thing is expanding the existing service area stepwise pattern, but we will get a real answer from the assessment. Yeah.
Tiffany and then Mayor Knudsen, and that might be the last question depending on how long we go.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brody. This is really helpful, and believe it or not, I thought of a question that I didn't. And actually, I've been really pleased about kind of the evolution of bike share and the partnership with LTD over the years, and just in seeing how it's developing. My question is specifically about that, and how common is that throughout the country? I mean, are you seeing other systems? I mean, I'm really familiar with the Capital Bike Share program in DC and some of the other ones. It is truly my favorite way to experience cities that I'm visiting. And I tell everybody, just get on a bike and go bike, find a bike share. And so I'm curious about this model where transit is really a key, the regional transit agency or whatnot is kind of partnering in bike share. Is that something we're seeing a lot more of, or?
We're seeing more of it. It is still rare. Some of the projects that I have worked on, one in particular was led by the transit agency, and that was LA Metro Bike Share, which is called LA Metro, and that was initiated by the transit agency, funded by the transit agency, and is operated by a third party. Bicycle Transit Systems, my former company, but there are other examples. Austin Metro, in fact, it's a system Dave and Jameson visited. There's a small system in Albany, New York, CDTA, that they also initiated and led that one. And so there's different structures, there's different examples and different organizational structures. I think that operating a bike share system, transit, how should I say this? Transit benefits bike share and bike share benefits transit. But the work of doing those things are quite different, and the skill sets and cultures to make those two things both successful are not mutually exclusive, but they're slightly different. We're specialized in making sure the bike share program operates well. LTD is specialized in making sure the buses run on time and the transit agency runs well. And there's an overlap there, and how big of an overlap we create is a function of the individuals involved in the cultures and the partnerships that we build. So I think I've been really encouraged by Jameson, by Dave, Carrie, in fact, this whole LTD team, and their interest in and seeing the opportunity here to expand the reach of transit. So it is rare, but I think LTD and Cascadia Mobility are on a very productive path, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just say that as somebody who has meetings all day long, and the transit can be a barrier to that, because if I'm riding the bus to work, getting around then becomes my problem to solve for, and having bike share in Eugene is a game changer. And so I think a lot of people would experience that same thing. So, and I know I'm just one person, but I definitely think it makes a difference. So.
Yeah, and further to Scooter's point, I mean, if people see, it's not just the app, right? I think it's the brand recognition in the public right of way, and knowing, okay, the bike is LTD and the bus is LTD and that's all LTD. I think that opens the doors for more people to be able to use it. And something I always say is bicycling begets bicycling. When you see more people ride, you're more likely to ride. When you see someone that looks like you riding, you might ride. And so it unlocks a lot of different opportunities. Yeah, thank you.
Mayor Knudsen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation, Brody, and all the work that has gone into this. I think my question is probably related to future work and future partnership and what's coming next. But I want to share one brief story first, which is that a few weeks ago when we welcomed one of our former HUD secretaries to Eugene for a lecture at the University of Oregon, I took bike share from Eugene City Hall to the University of Oregon, and I arrived there to a group of people who were very excited to have a conversation about housing and how communities can grow and change in ways that are more supportive and equitable and inspired. And I said to the group of people I was talking with, like, why would you not ride a bike from the downtown riverfront of Eugene to the University of Oregon? And there were a few people in that conversation who I think had their first sort of light bulb moment. I'm like, why wouldn't you do that? If you had the option, and it was bike share that made that possible. My question for the future is really about your slide speaking to the alignment with regional plans. And of course, I'm also thinking very much about some of the other opportunities that could come with this work and the ways in which this work could help us with our goals. And so the two specific metrics that I would be really interested to know more about, if we're looking towards a future that might be 500,000 trips on 500 e-bikes, like how many trips do we need supported through bike share in partnership with transit? I'm not sure exactly how that metric kind of shifts, but how many trips do we need in order to get to our mode shift goals in the City of Eugene's climate planning? Like, what is our actual target with that work, and how is this a stepping stone to that work? And I'm not at all surprised here you say there's not that many places where we can see this data combined in these ways, because they are really different types of systems. But I think it will be really important for the public to be able to see these benefits. And there is incredible opportunity for us to support mode shift in a way that is very affordable and supports public health and is delightful to people and reduces the stress that they experience in their daily lives. And I want to be sure we don't miss the opportunity to directly connect that dot to our city's climate action plan and the climate recovery ordinance that we have, because that is a near mark that we've set, and we have not made the progress that we need, but our transportation network and behavior change is a big part. The other metric with that would be wonderful to know some more about has to do with cost savings and affordability. And if we are shifting people's modes through the opportunity to access transit and bike share through this type of shared mobility planning, all of those additional rides are not just new people in our community, they're people who are choosing that instead of driving. And what does that mean in terms of potential cost savings for those households? Because we don't always do a really good job of explaining to people how it is that all of this work could allow you to save, well, just an average household, like $12,000 a year. And if we have an affordability crisis, which we do, the success of this work is a really important support to that. So just a reinforcement of something you already know, which is tracking those two goals, our emissions and climate goals, and our affordability objectives, will be really exciting to see. So thank you.
Thank you. And it's refreshing Mayor, to hear that we still can talk about climate goals. I didn't know we were allowed, but just knowing that is inspiring. I would have included that, but I didn't know that was still allowed. So
anytime we're talking about reducing pollution and improving quality of life and public health, I think you'll find a lot of people very interested.
I'm obviously joking, but you're 100% right, and those are absolutely metrics we should be tracking and goals we should be trying to hit.
Thank you.
Those comments.
Thank you, Mayor, for getting those last couple pieces in. And Brody and Carrie, thank you so much for your time and being able to support us. And, we know where to go to get more questions. So
yeah,
you have a good group here that's going to ask a lot of good questions. So we appreciate your time.
Always. Okay.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We're going to move to the next agenda item, which is our fixed route service policy update briefing. I'll hand it over to the next group.
All right, that'll be me. Dave Roth, again here, Director of Planning. And so tonight I'm going to be sharing with you an update on our fixed route service policy. So as you might recall, this is a policy that we brought to the SPC last fall. We had a very robust discussion. We got a lot of good feedback from the committee. We were able to incorporate that feedback into the draft document. And we're at a point now where we're preparing to take this to the board for adoption. So I'm going to give you an update. And maybe before I start, though, just reflecting back on our conversation around bike share, I think I heard, I think every single one of LTD's outcome areas that we've been talking about touched on with the last presentation, and it's kind of a good segue into the fixed route service policy, just to reemphasize the outcome areas that we've been talking about in terms of healthcare, workforce, housing, and education, and how whether it's transit or bike share, how our mobility services can support those outcomes. We have, I'll just say, you should have a copy of the policy in your packet, so you can look at this at the same time if you want. We have included those outcomes in the executive summary of the policy, which is on the first page. And I just want to speak for a moment that, LTD is committed to creating a more connected, sustainable, and equitable community. This is our mission, vision, values. Fixed route transit really is at the heart of that. That is the service that we provide more than anything else to our communities. And fixed route transit itself is foundational infrastructure for that commitment, and the impact extends well beyond mobility. So in terms of healthcare, reliable transit connects residents to medical appointments, pharmacies, health services, so on and so forth, reducing health disparities. Fixed route transit connects people to jobs. Obviously, we know this. People in our community rely on our services, fixed route, to get to their employment places and to go find new jobs. Housing, we're seeing this right now in our communities, both in Eugene and Springfield, particularly where a lot of new multifamily affordable housing projects are being located on our frequent transit network. And we're thinking a lot about how we can even better integrate our bus stop infrastructure with those housing projects. Again, affordability, reducing the need to own 2 cars. Maybe a family can go down to owning a single car, or some people might even be able to go with one without a car. And then education, fixed route service provides access to K through 12 schools through our youth passes, to LCC, to U of O, to all of the education facilities within our community. So the policy that we have here, the fixed route service policy, is our tool that we use to realize those commitments and to basically establish the standards by which we look at our fixed route service to make sure that it's performing well for the community and ensuring that these outcomes are well served. So with that, I'll move into my presentation. You can go to the next slide. All right. So let's see. I'm going to talk about the project itself, give you a little bit of a recap. I'll cover what's changed, the key policy updates, and then just show you an image from the draft final document, which you have in front of you. This is the previous, or actually this is the current service policy you see here that you can still find on our website. And the update is a significant update. It looks very different from the current policy. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, I've already talked a bit about the outcome areas, but one of the other reasons that it's important to have this policy is because it's required by the FTA. We are required by the Federal Transit Administration to have a fixed route service policy, and we're required to periodically review and update that policy. So this is not the last time we'll touch this document. We will come back to this again. So if we missed anything this time around, we will have future opportunities to come back to this. Next slide. The policy is broken out into 7 components: service overview, service design standards, performance standards, the service evaluation procedures for how we evaluate our services, Title VI policy, maintenance of the policy itself, and then appendices. Next slide. So in terms of the process and the project overview, we have integrated some new and updated policies, and we'll cover those in a moment. We did a case study against peer agencies to understand the best practices out there. We refined our fixed route categories and performance metrics, and this is probably the point where we spent the most time discussing at SPC last time, was around this area. It was the most interesting for me anyway, interesting discussion. And then we refreshed the policy design and graphics. So one of the objectives of this project was to make a much more legible document and more accessible for people to really understand, again, like why do we have a document like this? What are the different tools in here that we're using to measure our service against? So we kicked off the project last summer. We started off with a performance metrics analysis, so looking at how our current service stands up to the existing policy. In the fall, we did the case studies with peer agencies. We held a staff workshop, and we also had our SPC meeting in November. Last winter and into the spring, we've drafted the final policy, and now we're back with SPC tonight to share the draft final policy, and then we plan on bringing this to the board in I believe June for asking the board to adopt the policy. Next slide. All right. So key policy updates. So simplified route types. So there were, if you'll recall back to our discussion in November, there were a couple of routes that were in their own category. And one of our goals was to consolidate them into like categories so we didn't have these outliers that we're just measuring against themselves effectively. So Route 55 was moved to a community route. Route 24 was moved to a core route, and then we eliminated the express category and moved the 79X into college routes. Next slide. Then we reviewed our productivity threshold. We moved from a relative threshold to a flat threshold. So this simplifies our review and analysis of our routes. And it keeps for a cleaner performance evaluation of those route types. The new performance framework has these 4 categories. So we have exceeds our threshold, standard threshold, monitor or unsatisfactory, and then the framework also provides very specific guidance on what to do in the case that that route that you're looking at is not meeting the particular threshold. And those are on page 22, the advisory guidelines. Next slide. Yes, so talked about changing to flat rather than relative threshold. And then you can see here how our revised route categories measure against the revised thresholds here. So if a route is in that, say, unsatisfactory or monitor level, we would go back and look at what's going on, and we might think about a broad range of mitigations. It could be a marketing campaign to try to boost ridership. It could be special promotions. It could be things like looking at revising the route itself. And the very last ditch thing that we might do is think about more significant modifications or even route elimination or putting a route elsewhere altogether. That would be the most drastic thing that we would do. All right, next slide. We modified our frequency thresholds here. So this reflects the reality of how our service is operating today, where our previous thresholds were a little bit off from how our system operates. So we want to align this up better in terms of our headway frequency for our different route types. So this better reflects where we're at today. Next slide. We incorporated our bus stop spacing methodology, our bus stop balancing methodology. So this is the methodology that was developed during our system review project we did back in 23 and 24. So this provides us with a pretty clear framework for decision making around bus stop rebalancing. And bus stop rebalancing is a tool that we would deploy if we are having routes that are underperforming in terms of speed and reliability. Of course, there's a lot of factors that go into thinking about bus stop placement, and the new policy does a really good job of illustrating that and talking through those different trade-offs with some really good visual graphics there. So that's a new addition. Next slide. And then we updated the Title VI portion of the policy. And getting back to the example I mentioned earlier, if we're ever in a situation where we have to make a major route modification or change, that triggers the requirement to do a Title VI analysis, which is that equity analysis of the areas being served currently versus new areas that may be served. And we have included very specific definitions of disparate impact and disproportionate burden. We updated the disproportionate burden language, and then we also updated the definition of a major service change. Next slide. And then I already mentioned this, but significant reorganization of the document and a refresh with a lot of new graphics and new infographics as well. Next slide. So this is just a capture of the front page and the executive summary of the new final document. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and seek any comments or feedback or questions that you might have.
Rob, you're not following the process here. Go ahead.
I put the card up because Paul taught me that. Then I turn on this. No, I speak. Thank you, Dave. Broadly speaking, some of these standards relate to ridership, which is kind of response, but much of them relates to service, which are things under LTD's control, and service costs money. And so sort of philosophically, or sort of, if we want the service to be up here, but we only have money here, kind of what's done with that?
I'll remind the group that these are our guidelines for our existing service. So this document does not get into any sort of resource or budgetary conversations. Those conversations happen through our budget. They happen through our comprehensive operational analyses projects that we do every few years. And it will be a big part of the conversation with our long-range plan that we're kicking off right now.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I thought that some of the standards were having to do with span and frequency, what the service level that LTD should be providing. And it feels to me like that implies a cost to it, a financial cost. I mean, I get that that's a decision made elsewhere, but if we have standards that are up here, but we can't afford them.
Again, I hope I'm not confusing your question. This is a tool for us to look at how our fixed route service is performing without thinking about whether or not we have more resources to bring to the table and what that might look like. This is simply a tool for looking at existing service and making decisions and thinking through the performance of existing service. So this is not a budgetary document. This does not talk about resources or what it would look like to add more resources. Again, this is a technical document for our service planners to use to look at our current service.
Peter?
Thank you. My first question is about the performance standards. Last time you came and spoke with us, we discussed schedule padding as a potential source of experienced delay for riders, especially late at night. Did you consider adding that to the performance standards, or can you talk a little bit about your thought process there?
In terms of how our pulse system works, for example, or in terms of?
Yeah, just, because it's talking about on-time performance and a delay experienced by riders. And something we were talking about last time is that another type of delay that people experience is if buses get to time points early, which especially happens late at night or spring break and times like that, and that kind of delay. And did you consider adding that sort of delay to the process?
Yeah, we've actually been having a lot of conversations recently about on-time performance and how we all of the detail that goes into that doesn't necessarily find a home here. We are in the process right now of thinking about our time points out on the system and how we are measuring those against our on-time performance. I will say that we do have room for improvement there to provide better information to our customers around our time points, and how that it's experienced out in the system is we have, for example, a single time that might be represented across multiple stops, which is not always the most accurate information for customers, and that shows up in our BSIs, our bus stop signage. And so we are looking at some new tools. We actually have a request for information that we just put out, and we're getting responses back from vendors to potentially bring some new tools that will give us better analysis tools to actually refine those time points in a better way. So we are working on it. It's not represented in here specifically, but it is something that's ongoing.
Thank you. Yeah. Could I ask a second question? Yeah. So you mentioned bus stop balancing. Yep. When was the last time LTD did that, or are you planning on doing that process anytime in the future?
I can't answer the first question because it has not occurred since I've been here over the last little over 2 years. We are thinking about that, and I think where that will surface is during the long range plan, where we start to look at some of the performance along some of our frequent transit network corridors. And if we're seeing areas where we have degraded performance along those corridors, one of the tools is to potentially remove some stops and then rebalance stops so that you have fewer stops to make. Of course, there's trade-offs for that, and that is a big community conversation, and the methodology speaks to that about how we do engage with the public on that. So I do anticipate some of that work in the next couple of years here, where we might do a targeted corridor by corridor review, and we might incorporate some stop rebalancing.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Paul?
Thank you. My question is about continuity of service and whether that is something that exists in a different document or if it is addressed in this service plan. Just didn't see it in the packet, and I'll, I guess, provide an anecdote. A couple weeks back, maybe a month or so ago, there was a disruption to the EMX service because of a crash. I think it was around Dad's Gate. It's happened to be one of the few days I didn't bike to work, and ended up walking 4 miles home along that route without seeing a bus EMX go the way that I was traveling. Seemed to me that was kind of could have been better. We could have gotten buses onto that route quicker. So I'm wondering if continuity service is addressed elsewhere or if it's covered in this document and I just missed it.
Continuity and service in terms of service disruptions,
how we respond to crashes that might block a route, for example.
Yeah, so that's something that lives within our operations department, so not something that is found here. But if you do ever have feedback on those sorts of situations, we'd love to take it, and we can work with our ops folks to improve.
I'll talk to you after the meeting.
That'd be great.
Mayor Knudsen?
Thank you, Chair, and I really appreciate that point and question, Paul. Two observations. One, really appreciate the clarification of the route types in how you are organizing this. I think that's helpful to a lot of people. And two, I just cannot imagine that most people would think that reading a fixed route service policy would be a really excellent and interesting document. But wow, is it really an excellent and interesting document? And I just want to commend your team on the fact that it's very clear, and I think some really helpful feedback, but also there's an enormous amount of education packed into this document, visual and written. And I just really appreciate that because it's useful in all of our other conversations and as a reference point. So congratulations to you and your team on the clarity of this as a piece of communication and the policy update.
Thank you. That's really good feedback, and we did have a great team working on this, and we did make that a top goal and objective for this project, was to make a more useful document. Yep.
Rob?
Seconding the mayor, icons, pictures, good. Thank you.
That was going to be a comment I was going to make too. Just appreciate the hearing what the committee had shared last time, and just I'm interested in wow, this is really fun and exciting to look through. So I think that other people will think that as well. So really appreciate that. I was also going to say, I don't know what I signed up for, but I get alerts now about routes and the route by my house. So I'm not sure what it is. So I apparently to sign up for anything LTD sends to me, but I do get alerts now about disruptions and everything. And I actually I really love that. So thank you. I will look into what I did, but it's very helpful, whoever's sending me texts about routes. So thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Anyone online? Okay. Well, great job, everyone. If there are no other questions, we can adjourn at 6:53. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and thank you, speakers today. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Bye.